Alrighty, good evening, everyone. This is meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you guys for tonight's weather chat. Well, we certainly saw some colder temperatures last night down across parts of the deep south. We'll take a look at some of those temperatures that they got down there. We'll also take a little bit of a look at what we could be seeing over the next couple of days in terms of maybe yet another snow system that's going to track its way through the parts of the Midwest and then eventually all the way up into New England. But speaking of snow, let's talk about some snow that they had, of course, down across parts of the deep south. The other day. There was a system that made its way through, dropped some nice snowfall totals around the Memphis area. About 5 inches of snow there is that yellow color. So again, not an area where we tend to not necessarily see the highest snowfall totals, but certainly that was good enough. And not only that, but they got this snow. And then they saw that drier air mass move in, that colder air mass that made its way in last night. And so that is what helped to really set up their, getting those temperatures that were, well, in the single digits across much of the deep south last night. Again, when you have snow on the ground, that sunlight kind of gets reflected back out, prevents the ground from heating very much, and the air is not a very good conductor of heat at all. So again, when you have snow on the ground there, it reflects it back out. And then as long as that sky stays clear at night, those temperatures will really begin to drop. And that is what we saw across parts of the deep south last night. So kind of a nice little setup for you there. And believe it or not, we're probably not going to be seeing these temperatures, maybe not quite as low as what they were last night, but they are going to be staying a little bit below average as we continue our way through the next couple of days down around this area. So we'll take a little bit of a look at that. But let's talk about while we're on the subject. Let's see if we can't pull out maybe some of these temperatures that they saw across parts of the deep south. Let's take a look on over to Vicksburg, Mississippi. I've been there. Very hot place. Very hot place. The normal temperature for this time of the year is 57 degrees. They got up to 39 degrees yesterday for a high, or today for a high temperature. This morning, they got down to 8 degrees, which does set a new daily record, beating the old record of 11 degrees set back in 2018. So, there you go. One daily record low that was set there. Let's take a look on over at Jackson, Mississippi, the central part capital there of the state. They got down to 10 degrees this morning. That ties the all-time record of 10 degrees, which was set back in 1977 and also back in 2018 there. 20 degrees below average for the day today over there, and certainly not the only place that saw those lower temperatures. Let's take a look over at Greenville, Mississippi. They got down to 9 degrees this morning. However, they did not beat their record low. The record low was 4 degrees, and that was set back in 1948. But overall, you could see again another place where those daily average temperatures today were about more than 20 degrees colder than average. So certainly a very potent air mass there. Let's take a look while we're on it over to Greenwood, Mississippi. They got down to 9 degrees this morning. The record low is 5 degrees, set back in 1977 and also back in 2018. So they didn't quite break it there. But if we go over to Meridian, Mississippi, they got down to 11 degrees, 1 degree shy of tying the all-time record of 10 degrees set once again in 1977 and 2018. So certainly a nice little cold air mass there. And as mentioned, that wasn't the only place that saw some of those colder temperatures there. Maybe come back to this here in a little bit if we got some time. But let's take a look right now at our good friend, the latest weather map. And let's take a look here at what's going on. So we'll go ahead and refresh this bad boy out. And there we go. There is our high pressure this evening, sitting right over Alabama, not too far away from Huntsville, which for those of you keeping track, Huntsville is now the largest city in Alabama, population-wise, but not metro-wise. But there you go. Fun fact of the day for you. So that area of high pressure is now making its way down over towards Alabama, going to head into Georgia overnight tonight, bringing some cooler temperatures there. We'll kind of have to keep an eye on those ones too. Might try to drop again. But if you notice back off towards the west now, we can start to see here that we're starting to get a return of some of that Gulf air. Now, mind you, folks, when I say a return, as interesting as this is, keep in mind that we have a pretty cold air mass that is in place there. So those temperatures are going to kind of rise a little bit over the next couple of maybe over the day or so, but then they're going to drop again because we're going to see yet another high pressure moving in. However, if we kind of zoom out a little bit here, what we do see is this area of high pressure still really in control across parts of the deep south. Airflow around the high pressure is clockwise, so again, starting to bring some of that southwesterly winds back into parts of the very southern plains, I guess you could call it there, parts of the western deep south. guess you want to call it that too. But regardless of the fact, now I mentioned this the other day when we had one of our weather chats, and sometimes what you can see this time of the year, especially, is as these colder air masses begin to kind of move their way down to the south, they get blocked from going further over the mountains because colder air is much harder to lift, so it kind of piles up a little bit here, and sometimes we'll see this kind of stationary front that develops here. And again, if you look on the other side of it, 7 degrees over on this side of the front, 14 degrees back here. Now, mind you, it's still pretty cold up in the mountains, but again, it's very hard to get this colder air to lift over these higher elevations. So we kind of get this little bit of a, again, frontal boundary, more or less, put it that way, that sets up there. This is where we're going to be seeing our next system coming out of. Now, they're seeing heavy snow right now across parts of the Pacific Northwest and, well, at least in the higher elevations there. This system is eventually going to try to track its way a little bit more to the east. So let's take a look here, of course, at our good friend, one of those short-term models. And here we go. As we move our way through this evening, there is that, system making its way off the Pacific coast. Here is our area of high pressure down across the deep south. You'll notice we're probably going to see a new area of low pressure developing around the Oklahoma Panhandle as we head through the overnight tonight. That area of low pressure will drop its way down maybe into the Red River Valley, especially as we go into tomorrow morning. Little bit of moisture kind of caught up in between here could maybe produce some snow showers or at least a little bit of a wintry mix in some parts around Chicago, heading back over towards maybe Toronto. But again, not expecting that to be too much. However, we see this another little kind of a moisture more or less trapped here. Again, we got the high pressure that's forcing its way down to the south. It's kind of squeezing that moisture right along that frontal boundary. And so again, here's a little disturbance that's going to push its way through. Could maybe bring a dusting to maybe a couple of inches of snow across parts of South Dakota, heading back into Iowa. All the while, we can see here that as that high pressure begins to advance further down to the south, take a look. You can see that pressure gradient really tightening up here. That colder air begins to force its way down. It's going to interact with that Oklahoma low pressure. This is going into tomorrow night, which by that point it'll be over the Mississippi Valley, so it will move. Now it's going to meet up with this kind of a little disturbance here, as well as this colder air being forced down into the plains. And you can see how that low pressure really begins to take shape as it goes over the Appalachian Mountains, begins to deepen a little bit more, interacts with yet another area of low pressure, and take a look as it heads its way all the way up towards the parts of the New England coastline. Likely going to be seeing maybe some snowfall there across that area. Now, what's interesting too on the backside of this here is we actually do have some winter storm watches that are now in effect up around parts of the East Chicago suburbs. And the reason for that is actually not because of this particular system, well, maybe a little bit, but also because take a look at what's going to happen on the backside of this. Now we got that wind racing out of the north and the west, and that could set up a little bit of a lake effect snow event coming off of Lake Michigan as we go into Friday night and heading into maybe early Saturday morning. So certainly a colder air mass in place. Look at that high pressure, very tight pressure gradient across all of the Great Lakes, but because of the direction of the wind, at least initially, right now it's looking like it'll mainly just be Lake Superior and parts of Lake Superior and Lake Michigan down around parts of northern Indiana, but then we'll probably see some effect coming in across parts of Lake Erie, especially as that low tracks a little bit further off towards the east, and you can just kind of see here a little bit in the way of some lake effect snow maybe lingering as we go into, again, the day on Saturday. Interestingly, too, we're also going to have as a little bit of topographical assistance here across some of the higher parts of the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia. You can see that air just kind of getting forced up over those mountains. So even though the majority of the system will be well off towards the east, again, they could still be seeing some snowfall around Elkins, even Oakland County, Maryland, been there before. Very pretty up there. It's a great place if you ever want to escape the heat. But or you can come up here where I am. But again, this whole kind of western section here of these higher elevations could be seeing a little bit of snowfall. Again, especially as that system pushes through on the backside, you can see how it just kind of hangs out there. Meanwhile, that high pressure, look at that thing as we head into the weekend, really yet again takes control. So we'll see if some of that snow is still on the ground across parts of the Memphis area. Again, they got about 5 or some inches of snow there. It'll probably try melting a little bit, especially during the afternoons, but we'll see maybe if some of it tries to hang on, because if some of that might still be on the ground a little bit, maybe that could also kind of give a little bit of an assistance to some of those temperatures yet again across parts of the Mississippi Valley. So in terms of activity, Certainly going to be seeing it here. But yet again, kind of the big picture here is that area of high pressure, the one that we have now moving out, and then we're going to have yet another one move right back in. And as mentioned, that could bring a return of single digit temperatures possibly in places like Mississippi and maybe even northern Mississippi and maybe even Arkansas as well. So they're certainly not quite done yet with the below average temperatures. Now, for most of us in the Midwest, we've had that before. In fact, we've had that already a couple times. But again, down there, not quite as common as you saw. Those temperatures that they had today, some places were tying, if not even breaking records. So, with that in mind, that is kind of a little bit of a setup here. In case for those of you wondering about the upper levels, there you go. A little bit of a zonal flow as we go through the overnight tonight. But here comes that system off the Pacific coast, this little disturbance here, a little shortwave trough. You can see it kind of grows a little bit, interacts with that second area of low pressure. That'll help kind of pull it down a little bit more. And you can see we have a pretty defined closed low hanging over the Great Lakes by the time we get into the weekends, and that'll kind of keep those temperatures a bit colder. And then we're going to see some ridging starting to build up across parts of the plains, and it's looking like we could see a return of some of those above average temperatures, especially across parts of the central U.S. That's at least in the near term. So again, at least another week of at least another couple of more days here of some very wintry weather, especially across the deep south. And again, we have that next system that's going to push its way through. Let's take a look here. Of course, the current advisories, winter weather advisories are in effect again from Iowa all the way back into Montana. Now, again, these winter storm warnings are because of that stuff that they're seeing right now. And then we're going to see that moisture kind of get forced along by that high pressure, dragging its way down. Again, could bring some light snowfall to places like South Dakota, ranging from about maybe 2 to 4 inches of snow. Sounds about right. Not expecting this to be a heavy snow, but maybe a little bit of a fresh dusting there to kind of make things look even more wintry. As mentioned, too, there is that winter storm watch that is in effect again for parts of the East Chicago metro, more so Michigan City, LaPorte, heading all the way up towards Benton Harbor, Michigan. Been around that area before, too. Same thing around Niles. And again, that's going to be for that lake effect snow that they could be seeing as they go into the weekend there. So again, going to be kind of interesting to watch as that kind of sets itself up. So especially as we go into Friday. Now, again, this is an area that does get lake effect snow. Typically with Lake Michigan, though, we see the lake effect snow more so happening up around here just because of the predominant wind directions. But because this area in particular, if you look at the way Lake Michigan is situated, if you can get a good solid northwesterly wind or even just a straight north wind to come out, that air is traveling over the lake much longer than it is if it's coming in from the west. So it's allowed to pick up a lot more moisture when that happens. And so while it doesn't happen quite as frequently down here as it does in this area of Michigan, however, when it does happen down here, sometimes it can be, some kind of intense lake effect snow bands just because it's hanging out over the water much longer. In this case, the winds are probably going to be maybe northwesterly, northwesterly, so they'll probably coming in like that. So they'll have a little bit more water, distance to work with here than if it was coming straight off the west. But again, that could actually work in their favor around parts of Michigan City. Cleveland, Ohio area, kind of a similar situation, somewhat here. Again, as it go into Thursday night into Friday, could see maybe that little disturbance as it pushes its way through. Maybe a little bit of lake effect snow on the backside. If you've ever been around down this area before, again, especially as you go along Highway 119 up around this area, Westmoreland County, I've done that drive a lot of times, and honestly, it's very hilly here, but then you really go up in elevation, and that's why they have this winter winter storm watch that's in effect from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, all the way down to Elkins, heading even further down towards Beckley, and then into parts just north there of the Bluefield, Virginia area. Again, if you've ever been around this area, West Virginia is very hilly as it is, but really, especially, and even more so, it's actually interesting here is that in the weather office, they actually have Monongalia County, which is where Morgantown is, University of West Virginia, is actually divided up. And if you take 68 right along here, right about this point, you start getting closer to Cheat Lake area. I tell you what, that elevation goes up. I mean, it's a straight incline. We're talking, trucks with their flashers on for, quite a couple of miles because it's that much of an increase. So the weather in this part, again, is rather interesting, but the weather in this part is significantly different than the weather over here. Especially when we can get, some of these really good, strong winters that we get. Uh, this area can really have some wintry weather that you might not quite expect. In the panhandle here of Maryland, again, this is Garrett County, Maryland. Been up around here, McHenry. This is a place that really does, get some wintry weather. Elkins is the same way, albeit their temperatures tend to not get quite as low, but they will get hit with that snow. But what's interesting about this is if you take a look, the mountains continue over here, but it kind of creates a little bit of a, I don't want to say a rain shadow effect, it wouldn't be the proper term, but the reason here is that the winds are coming straight out of the northwest here, and so that's getting pushed up over those mountains, allowing it to condense, and then it really drops off a lot of its moisture. So even though the mountains continue over here, by this point, a lot of times, because the kind of the highest peaks are right around here, there's not really much left over, and we don't really see much moisture kind of making it across in this type of a setup. So that's why it's there. But like I said, if you ever done this drive before, you know exactly what I mean. uh, Really kind of a quick climate change there. And so it's interesting, you can see here they actually have Monongalia County, the weather service does this. They have it somewhat separate here, even though the border of Monongalia County is right here, they do split it a little bit because of that big elevation difference. So that's kind of explaining what that's going on. Looks like they might have some winter weather advisories that are going to be in effect for as we go into Thursday night into Friday. That's going to be possibly that system tracking its way, not possibly, that is going to be that system tracking its way up to New England. We'll see what the weather offices in Boston and other parts of New York do here. We'll see what they start issuing over the next 24 hours or so. Kind of interesting. Right now, winter weather advisory that is in effect again across parts of the deep south could see again a little bit of a dusting of snow and maybe even some wintry mix between now going into Thursday evening. That's that little low pressure tracking its way out of Oklahoma, getting kind of forced with some of that moisture there. We took a look at all that. So again, pretty interesting nonetheless. Certainly going to help out the areas and getting these kind of temperatures to stay low. Let's take a look at how they're doing in Memphis right now. It is 28 degrees there, dew point of 5 degrees. It is mostly clear there yet again. So I'll tell you what, their temperature could maybe take another drop again tonight pretty decently, especially with their dew point sitting at 5 degrees. But dew points are a little bit higher back here. Around parts of Arkansas. Let's see here, Little Rock. We'll take a look at what their temperatures are doing. 27 degrees over in Searcy, and it is 37 degrees over in Hot Springs, 38 down around Arkadelphia. Dew point there about 9 degrees. So it'll certainly be another chilly night, but probably not quite as cold, though, as what it got to last night. Over here it might be a little bit of a different story. Let's take a look down around the Atlanta area. Temperatures there right now sitting at, come on, load. There we go. It is 36 degrees over at the Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson Airport, busiest airport in the world. There are a few clouds out there, but they are mainly high level. Dew point sitting at 2 degrees. We'll see if that temperature decides it wants to take a little bit of a drop yet again for tonight. So there is your winterly weather, folks. For those of you who enjoy it, well, there's some good news for you. How about up around where I am? It is not really rose much. We actually have some light flurries, single digit temperatures for the most part, but we'll probably drop even lower once that area of high pressure moves back in from the north later on this week. All right. I think we've talked about enough weather first. Well, we can never talk about enough weather, but I think for you guys, this we've talked enough about it. So, with that in mind, everyone, I hope you all enjoyed tonight's weather chat. We'll be back here tomorrow evening. We'll take a look at some more of those low temperatures, and we'll see maybe if we got some other records that we'll take a look at too. We'll see how Louisiana did the other night too. So overall, like I said, I could keep going on this, but I think for the to keep you from information overload, we'll go ahead and end tonight's weather chat. So I thank you all very much for taking the time to join me tonight, and I hope to see you all back here tomorrow evening around the same time ish. And until that time, keep enjoying that weather.